Dabo Swinney's taking a transfer. Woo! Well, okay. Dabo Swinney has taken transfers before. I'll point that out. Hunter Johnson, who was originally a quarterback at Clemson, went to Northwestern, came back to Clemson. They took him. Paul Tyson, Bear Bryant's grandson, who originally started at Alabama, who then went to Arizona State. They took him a couple years ago. They did not take any transfers last year at Clemson. First non-QB transfer. That's right. They're in. Tristan Smith, Southeast Missouri State wide receiver, has committed to Clemson. I love this room that they're taking the photos in, by the way. The Clemson photo shoot room is incredible. He's got the sweet leather chair, all the newspapers from all their big wins over the last 12 years. Like, it is spectacular. Ari, we said they're going to start portaling more when the rev share started. I think we meant with guys from other power conference schools, but listen, Dabo's got a pretty good history as an evaluator. My guess is Tristan Smith's pretty good.
Yeah. Good for him, man. Good for him. I think that Dabo is the personification of all the things that you make fun of, which is in the chat, including when you make fun of me, of like, oh, old guy doesn't want to change. Old guy doesn't want new things. You know, you're afraid of evolution, all that stuff. Like, I think that he really was resistant to a lot of the changes that are in the sport, right? But agreed. I think that in order to continue to have faith in him, because, like, listen, I've given Dabo a lot of crap over the years, the last few years anyway, because, like, you know, even if you go back before you even knew I was going to be your co-host, you had me on the Andy Staples show at The Athletic as a guest. And we had great chemistry, and that's kind of how this started. But, like, do you remember what we talked about on that first show? I think what I said is what got you excited. Like, this guy gets it. Like, I was like, you can see the beginning of the end of Clemson right now. And this was like in 2017 because, like, it was happening from a roster standpoint. Like, they weren't recruiting at a high level, in my opinion, in comparison to where they weren't. What they did in the college football playoff was remarkable because there were two of their national championship teams were two of the three teams in the 20-year era of the recruiting post 2000 era that won a national title, not having signed a top 5 class. So, like, what they did was insane. But, like, in order to maintain that success, that year over year they're going to play for a national championship success, they just couldn't. You couldn't just keep beating the odds like that when teams like 2020 Alabama existed. And then they weren't engaging in the portal. He was, you know, saying things that maybe he didn't mean, or, you know, saying colorful things about the potential of NIL and all that stuff. I'm like, this coach is not getting it. He's just not getting it. And, like, here we are a few years later, and his team is in the playoff. Now, his team, I think, is probably considered one of the worst teams in the field as a result of his stubbornness when it comes to, you know, roster construction. But I think that even if you don't believe that this is a huge piece of news from a transfer standpoint, although I do trust him as an evaluator, there is no question that he has been a great coach and a great steward of that program. So if he is able to evolve and get over some of the old guy can't evolve problems, then, like, you do believe that, hey, like, if he takes a transfer from a receiver from a program you don't watch or never heard of, like, you could probably trust that that guy is going to be pretty good. Like, if he can get back on board with, like, here's a hole in my roster, I'm going to go fill it in a different way than I've been accustomed to filling it, then maybe next year when they're playing in a 14-14 game with Florida State in the fourth quarter, that guy will catch a touchdown pass and they'll win instead of losing. Like that, like, to me, that is the essence of this.
Well, and that was the one last year, the Florida State Clemson game last year.
It's like Keon Coleman is lighting up the scoreboard. They don't have anybody on their team that helps them.
You take Keon Coleman off Florida State and put him on Clemson, and I realized they weren't up for him. But if you did, Clemson wins. Like, it's that simple. And so I think it's a case of 90% of what Dabo was doing was sound and perfect and exactly the way he should do it. He just needed to tweak that 10%. And if he does tweak that 10%, they are right back in it as a perennial national title contender.
And if he tweaks that 10%, like, and I don't know if he'll ever get to this, but, like, what if he starts portaling like Ohio State portaled last year? Like, what if they go get guys
the results
like
would be better
Judkins?
Because I think, but I also don't think he would do it like that, because I think It would be very selective. Like, chemistry matters a lot to Dabo, and I think this Clemson team is a good example of that. If you want to commemorate your team's trip to the college football playoff, and I know there's a bunch of fan bases that would like to do that this year, Axia Time is the best way to do it. It's the official timepiece for the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy, and probably the best kept secret in college football. Their timepieces are heirloom quality and among the coolest designs in the college space. Axia Time has created a series of limited edition watches for all 12 teams in the college football playoff. Each design is limited to only 100 pieces. Check out your team CFP designs at axiatime.com, but act fast because they will sell out. Or I've got my Axia watch on right now. It is gorgeous. The way these things are priced for Swiss-made automatic watches, you actually can go one to rep your team, one for everyday wear, you name it. But I imagine you want the one to rep your team. I've got the Michigan commemorative from last year for the national title, and looking at that right now, that thing is spectacular. So that they sent that to check out, and it is gorgeous. Let's see if I can get it up to the camera. But it's got the box.
Be careful.
The box has Jim Harbaugh's signature on it, by the way, and it's just a gorgeous watch. And I imagine whatever team does wind up finishing out in this bracket might be able to commemorate with that as well. But huge accomplishment. Arizona State. Look at that Sun Devil watch. That's beautiful. Boise State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Penn State. Like these are really cool. So axiatime.com, check it out. Beautiful watches, beautifully made. I love mine. My son's trying to steal it, not letting him steal it. I think they probably have played better than their talent level.
What if he started taking luxury pieces, is what I'm saying. Like guys that aren't necessarily an overt need.
That fit, yes.
That fit and can make you better. It's like, who's the best receiver? Like, I'm going to make up this isn't happening. But if like Jeremiah Smith were available.
Right.
Like, would Clemson go do everything they could to add him to their roster next year? Like, if they could ever illustrate an ability to do that, or if, just a 5-star, already productive, future first-round draft pick receiver decided they were not happy where they were, like, would Clemson put their name in the ring for a guy that can change their offense, right? And maybe they think this is a step in that direction, but, hey, I guess evolution takes, thousands and thousands of years, right? Like maybe this is just his first step into evolving into the final product. But it's good to see them playing the game. It's also a sign
that he wants to keep this up. He wants to keep doing this and not, I'm just not participating. I'm done.
The whole thing with Dabo is that everything that he's done from a program standpoint, like you could like I like those things about him. Like, oh, I want to bring people into my program, and I want to reward those people for staying, putting the work in. This is going to be the old-fashioned way. You're going to earn your keep, and when you do, you're going to get rewarded for it. Like all those like principles, because like that's what we want in our lives,
and they work.
Right? Like we want those. Like when you're at a company like The Athletic or On3, like, oh, you write really good stories or you write a good column. Like you get more opportunity to do that until you get to a point where you become a person that just gets to do that all the time. It's like your work, your ideas, your striving for greatness is rewarded with more airtime, more front page news stories, more column opportunities. And like, that's what we want in our lives. And I get that. But the thing that I have a hard time with is that he's being paid millions and millions of dollars. And at a certain point, as much as it is admirable to want to reward the players on your team for sticking through it, by not engaging in the portal, you're also doing a disservice to your team, because now you might not win as much, and the players who actually succeeded in getting those spots and are playing well in our NFL draft picks will not get to achieve the highest level of winning as a result of you wanting to placate to the weaker links on your on your roster because you didn't want to get a transfer, right? Like, it's all the same things in life. If you work at an insurance company, like, would you not want to hire the best producers to make your firm as successful as possible because you want to reward the intern? Like, that's not how it works. You also have to, like, there's also merit to this and merit based. And just because you're in the program and you're trying hard and you're doing all the right things doesn't always mean that you're good enough. And like in life, sometimes people are good enough for things and sometimes they're not. And that's okay too. Right. Like I just think there's a line that has to be drawn in the sand of like, we're going to give everybody every opportunity possible to be successful here, but also you have to be, or you're not going to play, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just do it both ways. So,
well, and I think this is turning that way. And remember, they had a Purdue edge rusher in to visit over the weekend, so they've definitely put out a lot of feelers. They're targeting people in the portal. They're clearly trying to fill holes in the roster. So